Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to take a quick look at the extraordinary by-election for a Scottish Parliament seat yesterday, which resulted in Labour winning what was an SNP seat, but with both of them beating Reform UK into third place, despite heavy campaigning from Nigel Farage personally. But first, for daily news and politics, please hit the subscribe button to stay notified. So I'm a Labour supporter, so I'm delighted to see Labour win the by-election yesterday. But being completely honest, I'd have been happy with the SNP winning as well. I just didn't want Reform UK to win. And this is a seat they tried very hard in. Farage personally campaigned with an eye on the Holyrood elections next year. In fact, I'd pointed out 2026 as a huge year for Reform UK as long ago as last year, because we knew that they would this was before, by the way, we knew that they would double their share of the vote in the voting intention polls. It's because as well as a load of council elections to fight for, there would be parliamentary elections in both Wales and Scotland. Now, the Welsh parliamentary elections will be fully PR, so a prime target for a fringe party, and even the Scottish elections have some seats determined by PR. But of course, in the here and now, Reform UK's polling is such that they can actually win, even with a first past the post contest. They have profited from a combination of the Tories having provably failed and so far failing to rebuild. Although there are signs they might be taking that task more seriously right now. I may get on to discussing that if everyone else will stop blowing up. But also Labour announcing what should have been obviously unpopular policies, which are therefore drawing the daily attention of the news media, whilst the public are impatient for the improvements that were promised because they take time. Remember, the big legislation, such as on like workers' rights, planning reforms, renters' rights, they're still passing through Parliament. And Reform UK were able to position themselves as a third viable option for people's votes. It meant that they could attract not just protest votes, but practical votes, because it was possible for them to win. So what happened in Scotland? Well, there are a few factors which were always going to prove tricky for Reform UK. First of all, racism doesn't really sell as well there as in some parts of England. Being fair, there are a lot of parts of England where racism doesn't win votes either, but it is a bigger factor in the more strategically important areas. Not the case in Scotland. And as for anti-immigration stuff, I mean, Scotland needs more immigration. Second, Reform UK don't really have a Scottish operation. Farage was the main campaigner there, a man who wouldn't dream of standing for Holyrood elections himself, whereas Labour's campaign was headed up not by Keir Starmer, but by Anna Sawar. You know, both Labour and the SNP and the other major parties, it happens, have a Scottish-focused party, which were competing for this seat in what was a purely Scottish affair. Third, Farage's blatantly racist attacks on the Scottish Labour leader Sawar drew strong condemnation from politicians inside and outside Labour, including from SNP leader John Swinney, and I suspect galvanised more votes towards Labour than towards Reform UK. Farage had claimed he was only using Sawar's own words, but this was a lie, he wasn't. He was making it up. And I suppose the last one was the big thing for Labour that worked in their favour. They had, I gather, a hugely popular local candidate as well. But it's not like Reform UK were well beaten. The top three were reasonably close. Reform UK won 26% of the vote. Now, in their favour, they were effectively running up against two potentially unpopular incumbents. The SNP have been in power in the Scottish Parliament for over a decade now. Familiarity definitely breeds contempt in politics. However, the Westminster Labour operation, which is now in power UK-wide, is also not exactly winning hearts and minds right now. So the potential for Reform UK was there, despite the fact that their message has a tougher time appealing in Scotland. Yes, the deprivation they feed on is very much there, not so much approval of their proposed solutions. After all, why would Scottish voters care what Farage wants to do with a boat right at the southern end of England? But Reform UK does still represent, just as it does in England, a third credible option against what are seen as two incumbents. In England, those incumbents are the Tories who've only just left power and Labour who are now in power. In Scotland, it's the SNP and Labour. Another factor potentially in their favour, though I have no first-hand knowledge. So maybe some Scottish viewers can enlighten me here. So I happen to know last year that Reform UK were planning on developing campaign lines and tactics which took account of local issues in Scotland, being fully aware that their more crowd-pleasing stuff in the knackered coastal and industrial towns of England doesn't work so well north of the border. Now, I don't know whether that's working for them. Were they actually showing signs of developing those tactics? But the potential to do it still exists. If Reform UK can project a different offer in Scotland, like you compare Scottish Labour with the sort of Westminster Labour operation, Anna Sawar can take a different line on several policies. You know, he is different. Scottish Labour is not going to be fundamentally different. They've got the same core values, but they can present a different offer, particularly for the Holyrood elections, where they're going to do their own thing completely separate to Westminster anyway. Reform UK sort of need to do the same thing. They need to sell themselves as having specifically Scottish solutions. Now, are they showing signs of doing that? They need to, if they want to do well in the Holyrood elections next year. You know, but I mean, getting 26% of the vote in a contest where they came third, that suggests they can do well. They can certainly do well in the regional contest, which is PR, even if they struggle for more of the first past the post seats. Reform UK are not looking to form the government in Scotland, remember. They just want to be a big player in the Parliament, ideally a king breaker. And any success stories they get in one election feeds into more exposure for them and better performances for them in future elections, because then more people say, oh, these guys can actually win. So as I say, they don't just attract the protest vote. They attract the vote of people thinking, well, these guys actually can win. So it's good that they were beaten in this contest, but 26 is still uncomfortably high for me. Perhaps the loss of Yusuf will slow down the professionalisation of their party, unless they find a decent replacement. After all, although we don't know the details, we do know that the British Asian Yusuf, who was also Scottish, by the way, resigned after Reform MPs pushed some casual Islamophobia. That's not a great look when you're trying to claim that your party isn't racist, just concerned. Oh, we're not racist. So why did your chair leave over an issue of racism then? The guy who was basically manning the day-to-day operation of the party left over an issue of racism. Yeah. Finally, I do just want to pick up on something Sawar said after the result, which is really important for everyone in Britain to reflect upon. Now, unfortunately, I can't find the quote written down. I came across it as it was happening live. But it was, so I can't remember the exact words. It was words to the effect of Sawar saying, he understood what Farage saw when he looked at his face, but the people of Scotland, when they look at him, they just see a hard-working Scot. And the meaning behind the line is important to press. Farage is a racist. He made his comments about Sawar and the Pakistani community because of the colour of his skin. He is unlikely to have used the same line with a white Labour leader, because to Farage it wouldn't really make sense to do so. There is a fundamental difference between the way Farage sees people and most others. Anna Sawar is the leader of Scottish Labour. That's really all his face means to anyone. But to many of the core supporters of Reform UK, he's not even British or Scottish or whatever. He can't be, because he isn't white. These are not the people who want to unite communities. People with that mindset do not want to unite communities. Quite the opposite. And anyone who wants to vote for their communities to become friendlier and happier and safer should not even consider voting for a party like Reform UK. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.